What is up, y'all? Welcome on back. I just got home from watching James Gunn's Superman, and I'm here to tell you whether or not you should run to the theaters and spend your hard-earned money to watch this in theaters or not. So before I give you my thoughts on Superman, this is going to be a non-spoiler review. I'm probably going to record a full spoiler review a couple weeks from now. I want to see it again before I really jump into the spoilers of this movie. But this one is no spoilers, so if you have not seen it, you are going to be free to continue watching from this point forward. So I will not be spoiling any big moments. So James Gunn's Superman. It is the first movie of the new DCU that he is heading, and this is supposed to usher in a brand new universe for DC Comics. Does it live up to expectations? Is it the best Superman movie ever made? Does it get you hyped up for James Gunn's brand new DC universe? Those are the biggest questions going into this movie. But before I jump into this movie, I do feel like I need to throw out a couple of disclaimers. And I really don't want to spend a ton of time talking about the elephant in the room, which is Man of Steel versus this movie. Going into this movie, you are typically on one side of the fence. There's no in between. You either hate it or you love it. You are either a Man of Steel fan or you absolutely hate that movie. And I'm one of those people that really, really loves Man of Steel. I think that is one of the best comic book movies ever made. I do think that there are issues with that film. I don't think it's perfect by any means. And it definitely has some shortcomings when it comes to the story of Man of Steel. But that to me is like a perfect Superman movie, or the most perfect Superman movie that we have gotten so far. But I'm also not a huge Zack Snyder fan. I like a couple of his movies. I'm kind of in the camp that I think he is able to create a lot of great imagery and visuals for his movies, but when it comes to story and characters, he kind of sucks at it, if we're being completely honest. But I love Man of Steel. It has some very iconic moments in that. So just going into this review, I want you to know where I stand. But I am completely okay with watching a new Superman movie from a different perspective, from a different director. I have no problems with new versions of that character. I will not die on the hill that Man of Steel is the end-all be-all for this character. Now, with all that being said, I really do enjoy James Gunn's take on Superman. I think this movie definitely gets me hyped up for what the DCU can be, and the potential for this universe I think is really, really great. I think James Gunn brings a great, fresh perspective to what these comic book movies can be. In fact, I think this is one of the best comic book movies that we've gotten in recent memory, because we have gotten some terrible comic book movies over the last few years. So I don't want you to take this as the Superman movie is one of the best comic book movies of all time. It's not. It is far from it, but isn't it an enjoyable time at the theater? It is. It is definitely a movie that I would go spend money again to see in the theater. So I would recommend you go check it out in the biggest screen possible, because I do think this is a great time and a fun time at the theater. It's something that I could take my kids to, and they both enjoyed it for the most part. And my youngest son absolutely loved the movie, except the kissing parts. He did not like that. So yeah, I'm definitely hyped for the rest of this universe that James Gunn is creating. So what about this movie in particular do I really like, and maybe some of the things that I don't like about it? So we're going to start off with the positives first. David Cornsweet as Superman is absolutely fantastic. I think he was a great casting choice for this character. Am I ready to call him my Superman? No. I'm probably going to need a few more movies before I actually call him that. But in terms of a brand new actor coming into the mix and playing this character, I thought he did a fantastic job. Look, I didn't grow up on the OG Superman movies. I watched them a handful of times, but they weren't movies that I really just gravitated towards. I wasn't the biggest Superman fan growing up. In fact, I wasn't really a Superman fan at all up until the end of Smallville. I binged that entire series. That made me really fall in love with the character, because I really thought that Superman was kind of the most boring character ever, just because it didn't seem like, the ignorant comic book fan in me beforehand. It always seemed like, okay, well, he's just going to win no matter what. So why would I even pay attention to this character whatsoever? When we have Batman, who is obviously way more interesting. But once I dived into Smallville and I fell in love with his character in that series, that really skyrocketed Superman as one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. And then Man of Steel happened, and that shot it up exponentially from that point. So all that to say, I was never a huge Christopher Reeve fan or those OG Superman movies. I really enjoyed the animated series, especially when it mixed in with Batman, the animated series, for sure. But like Justice League, like those were great moments with that character, especially when he was paired with other characters that I really loved. But David Cornsweet is probably my second favorite Superman at this point. I thought he did a fantastic job as this character. Really, throughout the entire movie, I have no issues with his character. And it really gives me hope for the future of this franchise and this character, because I really do want more from David Cornsweet's Superman. So I'm very much excited for what he's going to bring to the table in future installments or future appearances. As for the other big time character in this movie, Rachel Brosnahan plays Lois Lane, and I thought she did a great job. Honestly, she doesn't get a ton of screen time here where we're able to really flesh out her character, and we don't get a lot of time between her and Clark in this movie, but the moments that we do get are so good. I really enjoyed the quieter, slower moments in this movie between her and Clark, or in Superman in most cases. I thought their chemistry was off the charts. I thought everything with those two characters were great. They absolutely nailed the casting for both of these characters, and then the chemistry between them is so palpable. And I can't wait to have more of her character as well, because I really want them to flesh out that character in a better way moving forward. There are some issues with the relationship between Lois and Clark in this movie that I felt like was a little rushed, and it didn't get fleshed out the way that I wanted it to. It just seems like we go from point A to point B, and it's like, okay, what changed your mind here? And that's in the most non-spoiler context that I can give you. But ultimately, I do like both of those characters and their relationships in this movie. I needed it a little bit more. As for some of the other characters that I really enjoyed, Mr. Terrific, one of the standouts in the film. Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, standout in the film for sure. Loved both of those characters and their iterations, and I really do hope we get to see more of them later on in this universe. And then Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. That was one of my biggest question marks going into this movie, was whether or not I was really going to like him, because Michael Rosenbaum is my Lex Luthor. That is the guy. I don't know if anybody's ever going to overtake his role as Lex Luthor. I think his take on that character was absolutely perfect. I thought they did an amazing job in Smallville and just making him a sympathetic character in that show. I really do like his character in this movie, and I liked his performance. There are some things that maybe could change a little bit, or maybe hit a little bit harder on, and it's more so in the fact that this movie takes place 3 years after Superman shows up. So his hatred and anger towards Superman isn't necessarily fleshed out the way that I would have liked, mainly because we're missing 3 years leading up to this movie. As far as some of the other side characters, we have Crypto, which I'm not going to lie. Going into this movie, I thought that was going to be a terrible decision. I did not like the fact that Crypto was going to be in it. I thought it was super silly, and I wasn't going to like it very much. That's the expectations that I had going into it. But honestly, Crypto was pretty damn good in this movie. It made me a Crypto fan for sure. So I thought they did a great job of making us really like that character. And yes, it does borderline on the silliness for sure, but I'm okay with it. It fits in the context of the world that James Gunn is creating. And then we have Perry White, we have Jimmy Olsen, and a bunch of other miscellaneous characters here. I do feel like the movie, and this is probably borderlines around the more negative side of the film, but it's kind of a mixed reaction for me. I kind of wish we had a little bit more from them. The movie is just so fast paced that it kind of leaves them on the back burner for a lot of the movie. More so Perry White than Jimmy Olsen. I thought Jimmy Olsen was great, but Perry White, I don't think we got enough time with him for me to really care about his character. So now that I've talked about the characters, I want to talk about everything else in the movie that I really did enjoy. So the CGI is a huge thing. If you go to any Marvel movie, for the most part, their CGI is absolute crap. I know in recent movies, the CGI usually takes me out of it. The CGI here and the special effects, practical effects, whatever, the whole 9 yards works 100% for me. In fact, it never took me out of the movie to say, wow, that looked kind of terrible. I didn't have any of those moments whatsoever. So the movie looks great. It definitely has this throwback to the OG Superman movies where it has 80s feel to it, which I'm definitely down for. I love the more vibrant colors that they went with. I thought that was all great. It fits the universe, fits this character, and kind of fits what they're trying to go for with the rest of the DCU. So I'm definitely down for that. It definitely felt fresh when it comes to DCU versus the MCU. And I have no problems with the more vibrant colors of the movie, especially like I'm not one of those fans that I need it dark, gloomy. I need Man of Steel. I need Batman versus Superman, Justice. I don't have to have it all dark and gloomy in order for me to enjoy a comic book movie from the DC universe. So I'm on board with how this movie looks visually, and I think it looks great. The score was good, not amazing. I do think that it is maybe like middle tier in terms of like comic book movie scores, and as far as that goes, it is not a Man of Steel score, okay? This is not Hans Zimmer coming in and just laying the pipe down and just giving us one of the best scores of all time. It is not one of those. But the score here is still good. It's serviceable to the movie. It's good. I love the new rendition of the Superman theme here from John Williams' score. I thought that was great, especially with more of the guitar-y sound. That to me just worked for this movie. And now I'm going to move into more of the negative thoughts on the movie. Majority of the things that I have issues with, I gotta also speak positively about it at the same time. This movie is a little over 2 hours long. I honestly kind of wished it was a little bit longer. I think I needed probably about 15 more minutes added to the runtime of this movie to make it, 2.5, maybe 240, something around there. I think in order for this movie to have fleshed out the characters in the best way possible, I needed a little bit more runtime. The movie is so fast paced that it never slows down to give you some of these slower moments and let the movie breathe in any meaningful way. So there's a lot there that I wished could have been fleshed out a little bit better. And in order to do that, we needed probably 15 more minutes at least added along to this movie. And if you know me, you know it takes a lot for me to say, yeah, add about 15 more minutes to this movie. Usually I'm like, you could have cut about 10 minutes. You could have cut about 15. No, I'm sitting here telling you this movie needed a little bit more runtime because it just did not have any time to breathe in between all of these action set pieces, which were great. By all means, they're great, but I wish I had a little bit more character development because it all felt a little rushed. And I think the complaint out there that this movie feels like you just jumped into probably the second movie of a trilogy. I think that is absolutely valid. I really wish we would have had a little bit more backstory. Now, the movie does a decent job of catching you up to speed, but it's kind of jarring just how in the middle of things you get thrown into. So they're not holding your hand whatsoever. But that's also another complaint that I have, and that is I think James Gunn trusts the audience too much here. I think people might feel a little lost with some of these characters. Like Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, Lantern, and then we have Hawk Girl. Like all those characters, I know just from my experience with the animated series, Smallville, the Arrow universe. Like those properties have definitely caught me up on the characters enough to really have a grasp on them in this movie. But if you have just the general audience goer who doesn't really pay attention to any of the comics or any of the other properties of Superman, then they might feel a little lost. And when I say negative, I don't mean that as a huge critique that I have in the movie. It's just something that I do want to mention for the average movie goer who's not a huge Superman fan. You might feel like that guy at a party where everybody's telling this inside joke that you don't really get. You might feel like that guy watching this movie. But he does a decent enough job of catching you up to things. But in terms of like the smaller things, the things that are more obscure in the Superman comics, those things I wish were explained a little bit better. He breezes right through them and trusts the audience to really care and know about those things. And I just wasn't of that element of this movie. Legitimately, everything is so fast paced. This movie breezes by. The pacing is great, by the way. It felt like this movie was like an hour, hour and a half, and it was a little over 2 hours. So again, the pacing is great. Don't get me wrong. The action sequences are really good, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, it doesn't hold a candle to anything that was in Man of Steel. There are a couple moments here or there that I was like, oh, that was pretty badass. But for the most part, I think Zack Snyder is so damn good at creating action set pieces that are memorable and just great to look at. The visuals within his movies are always fantastic. So I would put just about everything action-wise in Man of Steel over a majority of the scenes in this one. Man of Steel just did the action so much better when it comes to Superman. With this one, don't get me wrong, the action is really good. It's engaging. It's great to look at for sure. And you care about the characters enough to really keep your eyes on the screen, not looking down on your phone, checking the time. But I couldn't help but think about Man of Steel while watching the action scenes here. And that's really one of the reasons why I want to go watch it again before I do a spoiler review, because I feel like that's really unfair to this movie if I'm constantly thinking about Man of Steel. But obviously that is something that was in the back of my mind going through this, because Man of Steel is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. Now, there's one other huge issue, and it's probably the biggest issue that I have with the movie itself, outside of some of the character stuff where I needed a little bit more, needed to be a little bit longer, outside of maybe the action wasn't as great as it could be. And in regards to the action, it's really when he would be fighting person to person. When he fights like the kaiju in the movie, it's in the trailers and stuff like that. When he's fighting that, it's not as exciting to me. For whatever reason, I don't feel like I'm as interested in that fight as when he is fighting some of the more human characters in this movie. Those scenes are really, really good. I love all those action set pieces, especially when they go to the stadium, which you've also seen in the trailers. That scene, really, really good. Don't get me wrong. It's mainly, if I had to put a huge complaint, it was him versus the kaiju was probably my least favorite part of the action. But outside of all that, I have one huge issue with the movie itself, and it is ultimately what holds it back for me from being a truly like upper echelon comic book movie. As of now, I mean, when I go see it again, my opinion might change a little bit. There is this underlying story here where you've seen it kind of in the trailers, and I don't want to go too much into it because it will borderline spoiler territory. But there is a conflict between two countries here. And I'm not going to get into the politics of it all because that's not what we do on this channel. I don't really give a shit about that, honestly. And that's not really what I have an issue with. The conflict between these two countries is the least interesting part of the entire movie to me. It's not even the story of the conflict. It's really not even an issue. It's the fact that it borderlines on camp and silliness that it kind of takes me out of the movie altogether. And again, I don't want to dive too much into it because it's a spoiler discussion for sure that I will save for later. But the characters here that are involved in the conflict, it's just too silly for me. I think the performance just doesn't fit what this movie needed. And we have comedic beats from other actors and other characters that I don't necessarily need it in this conflict. This conflict should have been more serious, and it was borderline camp to me. So I don't know, maybe my opinion might change on a second watch through, but for right now, it is absolutely my least favorite part of the movie. When it would ever cut to the conflict between these two countries or anything to do with that, my interest would just crash almost immediately. And then the last thing I want to mention is probably one of the more important aspects of this movie if you are a huge Man of Steel or Snyderverse fan, and that is humor. I think if you are a Snyderverse fan, you probably are not going to like the tone of this movie. If I had to guess, majority of the Snyderverse stands out there, the ones that are just deep in their love for the Snyderverse and can't have anything else other than dark and gloomy characters, you're probably not going to like this movie a whole lot. And that's mainly because they insert a lot of humor into it. James Gunn, in his humor with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I thought was really great. A lot, I mean, there's some times in those movies that I didn't find it to be all that funny. This one, I think, is one of his least funny movies, and it's not because he didn't try. It's because he did try, and I just didn't. I just didn't really find any of those comedic moments to be funny to me. Now, a lot of it's revolved around crypto, but some of it is just with characters that don't need to be funny. We have Guy Gardner, who tends to be the comedic character of the movie, and I'm fine with that. I thought his character was absolutely fantastic, and I loved every moment with him. I definitely not complaining about that. But we have serious characters who are doing silly, campy things at times that really does take me out of the movie. And that's just another big complaint that I have with it. Does it drop my score down exponentially? No, but it does make me not like the movie as much because it just feels like they're trying so hard to make you laugh, and it is just not working whatsoever for me. But despite all that, guys, I think this is still a really good movie to go see. I think the characters are, for the most part, really, really great. I think this is one of the most comic booky movies that you will ever see. This is stuff that is so obscure from the comics that you will see it and you're like, oh, damn, I never thought that would be in a live action movie. It feels like they have just sewn together like 3 or 4 Saturday morning cartoons and just made that into a live action movie. And I really loved that aspect of it. It just felt a lot of fun to me. And it felt like I was sitting on a couch eating some cereal on a Saturday morning. And I think the action, for the most part, is really, really good. And the whole movie itself is just one worth going to go see in theaters. I'm leaning towards like a 3.5 stars for this movie. I'm really interested in going to see it again to see if my thoughts improve on it, if my score improves on it. So be on the lookout for my spoiler discussion over the next couple weeks. But guys, if you have seen James Gunn's Superman, let me know down in the comments below of how you feel about the movie. Where does this rank in your all-time favorite Superman movies? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're there, hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps us out. And with that being said, I appreciate y'all joining me for this review, and I'll catch y'all next time on another one. Later.